guys, my name is Lacey of Spookulous and Fat Hips, and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Trying very desperately to catch up on reviews, so here we go. Today, as promised, we're going toe to toe, bundle to bundle, because as Makeup Struggles has famously said, bitches love bundles. Today, we're going to be comparing the Morphe x Jaclyn Hill Vault to the Ace Beaute. I have literally no idea how to pronounce their names. Ace Beaute, Ace Beauty. Correct me down below. To their Paradise collection. Because I think, like a lot of people, when these two collections came out, there was definitely a lot of similarities between the two, and a lot of people couldn't help but to compare the two. So it just seemed like the natural order of things for me to pin them against each other, so to say. I'm a little late to the party, obviously, with the Jaclyn Hill Vault collection. A lot of strong opinions about these palettes, but I figured I would share my opinion anyway. And then when it comes to these guys, I actually feel like I haven't heard a lot about these. So already we're at opposite ends of the spectrum here. Though I personally haven't seen a lot of reviews, I know people were also like losing their minds about these though. So maybe I stand corrected, I don't know. Like I said, lots of similarities though. So I think I'm just gonna grab the similar palettes from each collection and we're gonna go from there. Let's begin. Right off the bat, just talking about the Jaclyn Hill Morphe collection before I compare it to one of these Ace Beaute palettes. I liked the packaging. I liked that each palette has its own theme and like the colored accents of the sparkles. I know there's controversy about whether or not they were able to use this logo design. When is there not controversy on YouTube? I liked that they all came in that nice little collector set, and I personally am someone who loved the original Jaclyn Hill palette, not so much because I'm a Jaclyn Hill fan, but more so I thought the palette was really nice quality. So I was excited when these came out because I figured they would be an extension of that palette and that quality. I'm going to start off with what is arguably the most boring of the Jaclyn Hill Vault. This is the Ring the Alarm palette. It is kind of the more neutrally warm tone palette. Very Beauty Guru, Copper Eye, Nude Lip-esque. My white balance is totally being thrown off of this palette. Again, before I get into the comparison, I'm just going to say the Ace palette because I think it's Beaute, but I just don't know. The Ace palette, it's the Paradise collection. This is the Blossom Passion palette. This packaging I like so much more with the beautiful flowers, the color that tells you what the inside's going to look like, and this kind of raised logo in the middle I love so much. Also a reddish warm palette, but this is exactly what I would want from a reddish warm palette. Obviously, the Morphe one has much more browns. It's going to be a little bit more typical, a little bit more wearable, which I say ironically on this channel. The top one is like, bam, in your face, you like reds and pinks, here you go. This is actually the palette that I have chosen to put all over my eyes today. I will give you guys a close-up. I think this looks amazing. Before I even get into the quality, I'm just going to talk about the comparisons of the following palettes. But yeah, the top one, the Jaclyn Hill palette, is a more typical red palette that we might see. The Ace one is much more, you want red, here's some red. Back to the Jaclyn Hill collection, we have the Bling Boss palette, which I think a lot of people were very excited for. I apologize for my chair like I do in every video, because this is very purpley and we've all been demanding a purple palette. However, once again, the Ace counterpart in the purple department is very much, you want purple, here's some purple. Really very few colors that are not purple or some kind of other like cool tone alternative to match the purples. To give the Jaclyn Hill palette some credit, there isn't a lot of browns in their palette, it's just a little bit warmer, where the Ace palette is while it's a very much more purple palette, it's a much more cool tone, like charcoaly smoky version of a purple palette, but you get really pretty purples in both, to be very fair. Next, we have two very fall toned, very lacy toned, like my favorite kinds of grungy colors, eyeshadow palettes. This is the Armed and Gorgeous Jaclyn Hill palette and the Classical Paradise Ace palette. To me, these were the standouts of both collections because I feel like we've all been dying for some grungy colors lately, and these were some of the first palettes that really gave that to us, especially with the greens. I will say out of both bundles, I've gotten the most use out of these two palettes. And then the last two palettes in either bundle are kind of the wild card palettes because you obviously can't compare these. This is a cool tone greenish blue palette that I think, like the second to last palette that I showed, this is also the one that I think a lot of people lost their shit over. This is the Dark Magic palette compared to the Slice of Paradise palette in the Ace collection, which is just a straight up rainbow palette, and we've seen a lot of rainbow palettes before. I will give the Jaclyn Hill the edge on that. I really wish they did something different than a rainbow palette because we all have seen 1,000,001 rainbow palettes everywhere. And it's the palette in the bundle that I've gotten the least use out of because I just have too many rainbow palettes. I am just going to talk about each individual bundle now. The Jaclyn Hill bundle, pros and cons. I like the design of all 4 individual palettes. I think it's very interesting. I think it's cool that they did 4 smaller themes as opposed to releasing another giant palette. I get that everyone was kind of turned off of like, these are the leftovers of the first collection. You couldn't think of anything original. I don't know how I personally feel about that. On the one hand, I do think it's a cute idea. I like that you can get them all in a box set. I like that you can also buy them individually, so if there's one that sticks out to you particularly, you have that option. I liked the price point on these very much. I think they were all less than $20. I'm holding specifically the Bling Boss palette because out of all 4, this is my personal favorite quality-wise. I think this is the best to work with. I've had the least problems with this palette. I think there are some things that just don't go wrong with a Morphe formula, and that would be the foiled metallic shades. I just think that they're so pretty and they're so silicone-y, and Morphe doesn't tend to F these up pretty much ever. Their mattes maybe are a different story, as we've all come to see. Given the types of shades that are in the Ring the Alarm palette, I'm really shocked that this isn't, to me, the nicest palette in the collection. I find this more difficult to use than the purple palette, which is strange because these tend to be very safe colors and these colors don't tend to be messed up very often. But I guess because they're a little bit deeper, there's a deeper purple, a deeper brown, maybe that's where the problem is. But very rarely do I find issue with brown shadows. But a lot of the issues that a lot of people have been having with these palettes, the skipping, the patchiness, I get even with these more safe colors, which is weird to me. Like I said, I really thought going into the bundle that these 2 palettes were going to be my absolute favorite. And I've used, okay, obviously at this point you've all seen the awful reviews, the awful swatches of the greens, that they blend away from each other. And it's such a shame because these are some of the most beautiful eyeshadow colors I've ever seen. But even when I reposted the original swatch picture on my Instagram, I know a lot of people commented on that picture being like, that's patchy. And I really try not to let a lot of bad attention get to me sometimes when it's a palette I'm interested in, because I know that I personally love the Subculture palette, for instance, but a lot of people hate that palette. This one, I feel like the bad attention was very real, especially with these shades, the ones that people have been really having an issue with. I find myself having the same experiences with these shadows. I find them to be difficult to blend. I find them to be skippy. I find them to be patchy. Not, to me, complete throwaway palettes. I can still get these to work. I just have to be very careful. I have to be very specific with my placement. I have to put the dark color specifically where I want it and then blend it out with a lighter color. Like, it's not what I would expect even from a Morphe shadow. Like, Morphe shadows aren't the best normally, but they tend to be pretty good for the price. They tend to be pretty usable. These have a terrible learning curve, and I'm really disappointed. I'm really disappointed with how Morphe and Jaclyn Hill handled the response to this. For her to go on camera and be like, it's the lowest return palette ever. I don't see what the problem is. I've been personally jamming people. I don't find that to be appropriate. I also don't like this whole bandwagon of like, there must be quality inconsistencies and we have to recall some, we need to investigate. That not just Morphe's doing, but I feel like a lot of brands lately, once they start to get bad reviews, are being like, oh, there just must be inconsistent batches, as opposed to thinking, maybe we need to rethink all of it. I don't know. Overall, do I hate these? No, I do like them. I do use them. I've gotten them to work when I went to visit my sister the last couple times. These were palettes that I was taking because it's easy to put them all in the bundle. It's easy to take the bundle with you. So I don't hate them at all. I think they're fine. I don't think they're mind-blowing, and I definitely agree with a lot of the criticisms, especially on those deeper, more grungy greens. They're also more affordable palettes to begin with. Do I think you need the entire bundle? Absolutely not. I think that you could pick the palette that maybe you like the best, maybe the 1 or 2 palettes you like the best. You definitely don't need all of them. These palettes, however, oh my god. Every time I wear these, first of all, I get a shit ton of compliments. Everyone's like, oh my god, what's on your eyes? Like I mentioned, this classical Paradise palette is absolutely my favorite. It is so like apple spice, fall, cider, picking a pumpkin kind of vibes to me. It's so perfect for the season right now. I think it's such a good color choice. I wish maybe there was another green in this palette. However, to me that's kind of where this rainbow palette comes in. This is a really good accent to the other 3 palettes because, like I said, I do think it's a little bit lazy to release a rainbow palette at this point because I think most people, most eyeshadow lovers, probably have at least one Roy G. Biv palette that they love specifically. What I will give to this palette's credit is that there isn't a duplicate of these shades in any of these. There are some similar ones, but there isn't a true duplicate. I liked that they had the foresight to not duplicate any shades in any of the palettes. To give Jaclyn Hill credit though, all of her shadows are extremely unique within the whole collection. Like I said, there are some similarities in this palette to these other 3 palettes, but whatever. So I have known about Beaute, I still don't know how to pronounce it. I hope that you will politely correct me down below. I've been familiar with the brand since their first eyeshadow palette, the Quintessential eyeshadow palette, and I bought that when it came out. I really love that palette. I think I've talked about it in the past here. They weren't exclusively a cruelty-free brand then. I mean, technically they were, but they sold mink lashes, so a lot of people didn't consider them to be truly cruelty-free. They have since stopped selling mink lashes, so I'm talking about them now because they are a cruelty-free brand. I think that these shadows in this bundle are light years better quality than that Quintessential eyeshadow palette, the first one they released. And I liked that palette. I'm not saying that in a bad way. But these eyeshadows are fucking ridiculously pigmented. These are like dangerously pigmented. When I use these palettes, I have to very carefully dip once. I have to tap off my brush and I have to be very careful because if you're not careful with these palettes, the pigment blows out very easily and you lose control of your eyeshadow very quickly. These are some of the most beautifully pigmented shadows I've ever worked with in my life. And I think these palettes specifically were done so well because yeah, it's a warm palette, but it's a bright palette. Yeah, it's a purple palette, but it's a smoky palette and it's very intensely the colors and their themes. Like A+, I have very minimal complaints. Like I said, if I was going to redo any of the palettes in the collection, it would be the rainbow one. But I think if you're like, I don't have a lot of eyeshadow, I want to get a nice well-rounded collection, you would have your bases covered with these 4 palettes. And I can honestly safely say, and I don't say this lightly, if all of my eyeshadows disappeared tomorrow and I had to go about slowly reaccumulating my collection again, I would want to buy these again. These to me are going to be staples in my collection here on out because of how amazing the quality is and how much I appreciate the color stories. I'm going to swatch some mattes from the Jaclyn Hill palette and I'm going to compare them to mattes in the Ace palettes. I know you can't always get the full story from swatches, but I really feel like you guys are going to see the difference. That's all one swipe. As you can see, it's real patchy. Like, this really is a very good indication of the kind of formula you're going to be working with. It's very dry, it's not very creamy. The metallics, however, I could easily compare in both palettes. They both have that very wet silicone-y feel. They're both nice. The mattes in this palette, however, very creamy, very dense, very easy to smoke out. You can feel the difference even in the darker colors. Again, one swipe, I think you can see the difference in what I'm talking about in these deeper shades compared to these ones. And normally in most palettes, I find deeper shades hard to work with. I don't really experience that problem with the Ace palettes. I really like can't speak highly enough about the quality of them. Just for fun, I think I'm going to swatch some of the shimmers so you can see that those are the things that to me are comparable to the Morphe palettes, because they're just kind of in the same wheelhouse of formula. Ace is on the top, Morphe's on the bottom, but you can really not see the difference. They're both very wonderful. So yeah, closing thoughts. Can I recommend the Morphe palettes to you? I'm gonna say no. And I hate to do that, and I very rarely don't recommend palettes. I normally can see the bright side of things, but I feel like even for the price point, there are nicer options available. Even in these like weirder color stories, I feel like more and more brands are starting to like hop on the trend of like these grungy tones. Like I think I just talked about the NYX palettes that came out recently. Like I feel like you can get these grungier tones. And I guess Morphe might be feeling the heat of it a little bit, because I think these were originally supposed to be permanent and now I think they're limited edition. Would I recommend the Paradise collection to you, however? Oh my god, hell yeah. Do I think you need to get the bundle? Probably not. I feel like if you're in the market for like a nice purple palette, if you're in the market for like the most warm palette ever, like side note, if you're currently tempted by that Natasha Denona Cranberry palette that just came out, like do yourself a favor and get this instead. I think these are so nice. Like I mentioned earlier, the only one I would skip on would be the Slice of Paradise one, but that's only because for me personally, I have so many rainbow colors, but this green's really nice. I really love this orange. They complement the other three palettes well. I'm not mad to have it. I love that whether it's the Jaclyn Hill palette or these palettes, you have the option of getting one or all of them. I know they were selling a PR kit for these. You don't need the PR kit. Don't fucking spend the extra money to get the PR kit. But the bundle's nice, I'm not gonna lie. I'm really interested to see what this brand comes out with going forward, because like I said, this formula is such a nice improvement from the past formula that I've used from them. Good job, Ace Beaute. Still, please someone tell me how to pronounce this. What?
Pronounce what?
There's like a, I don't know how to say this word. It's like beauty, but it has like an accent on the end.
Beaute?
Beaute?
Beauty?
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 Matt just might have told me it might have been Beauty.
Is it French or Spanish?
I feel so ignorant right now. I apologize.
I think it would be tea. Like
Beauty makes sense.
Tea,
like
right?
beauty. I don't know. If
that's the peanut gallery talking though, so don't mind me.
Like I said, if you guys can politely correct me down below, please do. But that's it. That's everything I got for this bundle versus bundle challenge. It's not a challenge. I just decided because they were both bundles and both similar and all that. Whatever. If you like this video, if you like bundles, if you like palettes, if you like me, please like and subscribe, and talk to me down below if you've gotten any of these palettes, what you think of them, if you're interested, etc. Definitely follow me on my Instagram, which is also Spookos and Fat Hips, to see what I'm up to when I'm not on YouTube. I remain fairly active on there. I tell you guys what I'm buying, my opinions on new releases, things about my personal life, etc. I also now have a Patreon that will be linked down below, which is where I post all of my exclusive spooky content, and any proceeds that I make from the Patreon goes directly back to this channel, which I thank you so much for checking out. But yeah, that's it. That's all I gotta say. Definitely let me also know what other bundles that I should check out, because man, like Makeup Struggles hit it on the head when she said the bitches love bundles. We do. We really fucking do. Thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye guys!